the Lakers and Jerami Grant. This is, I mean, look, at this point, I know somehow it is still July. It feels like it's July 2025 at this point. And Rob Pelinka is still sitting there and still not done anything. What's that?
Right. It feels like it's July 43rd or something.
Right. It does. Yeah. It does. So Lakers fans are very upset with their front office for not having done anything at this point, other than draft players and bring back their own guys. I've talked for a long time on Lakers Nation about why that's the case, why it's gone this way, and that sort of thing. But now there's some things popping up about, well, maybe they had some discussions about the Blazers about Jerami Grant, and there was maybe a deal that involved 2 firsts and that sort of situation. And that the Lakers ultimately balked at the idea of doing that at some point in those negotiations. And then Zach Lowe had a little comment about, it's hard to tell how much he was just kidding, but that we should just start printing Jerami Grant Lakers jerseys. Keith, do you see a deal to be struck here? Because I think there are some challenges. So I want to get your perspective on this. Is there a deal to be had here? And is Jerami Grant worth 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, so that's the tricky part, right? That's the part that truly matters in this discussion. I think, is there a deal to be made? Maybe, but not without the 2 first-round picks, because the guys the Lakers would be sending to Portland don't necessarily have value to Portland. That's where it gets tough.
That's the exact problem that I was just talking about on Lakers Nation. Yep.
Because he's at roughly 30 million, right? Because especially if you're considering with the Lakers with the apron issues, they probably want to send out a little bit more than they take back. So I'm just going to call Jerami Grant 30 million, right? So the Lakers want to get to sending Portland $30 million. So that means one out of Hachimura or D'Angelo Russell has to go, right? That seems pretty easy. And I would think if you're acquiring Jerami Grant, probably want to move on from Hachimura, because what do you need him for? So then what that turns into, if you're the Lakers, is where are we going to go, to make up the rest of it? Is it going to be Gabe Vincent? Is it going to be Austin Reeves? Is it going to be Jared Vanderbilt? Here's the issue with Reeves, I think would be fine because you would make that work. But if it's Vanderbilt or Vincent, it's the extra year's worth of money. 1 more year with Vincent, 1 more year or multiple more years with Vanderbilt. That starts to become the issue, right? So then you run into how do we make this? Oh, you have the trade machine up. I just noticed. I just looked back here. So that becomes the challenge, right? For the Lakers is, who are we going to send out, in this, and where do we go? So trade that should work. What you just put together there.
I did.
But your challenge is, if I'm Portland, if I'm taking on Hachimura and Vincent for this season plus next season, I want both first. Now we circle back around to your last question is Jerami Grant worth 2 firsts? That's tough, right? Because you're talking about 2 first-round picks that are probably going to be a little bit further out. I mean, the way he's playing in the Olympics, I should probably just stop saying post LeBron, because who the hell knows anymore? It's so good in the Olympics. I tweeted it yesterday during the game. Like, why would he ever retire? Like, just
I saw that.
50, right? Like, why not? I guess, right? But that's my challenge is, do I want to give up that? Then I see you dropped them in there, the 29 and the 31 first. I would need protection on at least one of those.
Yep.
Just in case everything goes completely sideways. That's where it gets hard. If Jerami Grant was on like another team that needed to rebalance, or a team that wasn't just looking to go with kids, maybe then you could be like, well, send them D'Angelo Russell and they could play him. But they don't need a point guard, right? And that's where it all kind of gets really, really messy.
Right. And that's the challenge that I keep running into when I'm looking at this situation. It's that, the Lakers should have interest in Jerami Grant. First of all, his contract is not good. It's not a good contract. We knew it the second he signed it last summer. It was not going to be a good contract. That's when everybody went, oh, damn, Damian Lillard just got traded. Can they go back and undo the Jerami Grant contract? Can they get out of this thing? Because we knew the second he signed it, it was going to be a bad contract. So that's a challenge. Good player, though. Good player.
I don't think his contract's as bad as some have made it out to be.
It's
I
not
think
like the
some
worst in the
people
league.
exactly. Some people see it and they think like, oh man, Jerami Grant is making a max deal. He's not. He's way under the max. Way under the max for his years of service, even like his years of service, he's like 20 million plus under the max each season. So yeah, it's for me, it's more the length than it is the dollars. Like I don't love the 36 million in 2027 when he'll be 33 years old. That's the one where I'm a little like, yeah, that's where it gets messy.
And from the Lakers side of things, they're going to look at this and say, well, you can't look at Rui Hachimura with only 2 years on his deal and say, oh, we have to absorb Rui Hachimura. Like, oh, this is this negative contract, this anchor. If we're not going to also recognize that Jerami Grant's not a great deal either, and his actually goes 4 years. But to the Blazers, they don't want Rui Hachimura necessarily. They don't want D'Angelo Russell. They don't want to win games. They don't want to mess anything up in the Cooper flag race or anything like that. What they want to do is just add as many young players as they can get. But from the Lakers side of things, D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura are starters. So then the math becomes we're giving up a starter plus 2 firsts to get Jerami Grant. And so that's where I think there's a disconnect between how the two sides are going to value this. And so that's where I'm curious to see if there is a deal to be struck, because they're going to value things very differently. And maybe that's where you need a third team to come in that would value Rui Hachimura or D'Angelo Russell. And then you can try to find something that works there. But just interesting that this is something that continues to pop up. And this is, Keith, I think this is one of those situations, whether it's the Lakers or somewhere else, that we probably see a little bit more traction with post August 6th when we're living in a post Lowry Markkanen and decision world.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's true too. I think this is probably one, let's revisit it in middle of December, in January. Let's see what it looks like then when we have a little bit better of an idea. Because right now, today, here would be my bigger question with this. I really like Jerami Grant.
Yeah.
Is Jerami Grant a big enough upgrade over Rui Hachimura that I'm giving up the other stuff?
Yep.
That's where I would have to really, I don't know, right? I just don't know that he is like that. That's probably my biggest worry on this trade is I think in a vacuum, yes, I would rather have Jerami Grant even on their respective contracts.
I agree.
But for the Lakers specifically, you're talking about, because in this world, D'Angelo Russell's still there. He's coming in as really 5th option, right? Most nights, because you're going to have obviously LeBron and AD are 1A. Then you have the 2 guards, Reeves and Russell. Then you have Jerami Grant would be the 5th option in that starting group. That's the same as what Hachimura is. Whether he starts, comes off the bench. I mean, there's lots of ways they could play that out. But at that point, I'm like, did I just give up my 2 best trade assets? Because again, whenever we do this, we don't act stupid, because LeBron's not a trade asset because they're not going to trade him. Right. Sure. So like, and now they can't, right? So like, that's like, I mean, they could, but you know what I mean? So it like comes into, we try to be realistic about it. The Lakers' 2 best trade assets are those 2 future first round picks. And at that point I would be like, man, I need a really big upgrade. This is where it becomes, you can't just do something to do something, right?
Yep.
Because then it could get really sideways on you really, really quickly with that. So that's the tough thing. And I know because I had it in the questions on the shows I did when you weren't here, where people were like, what about D'Angelo Russell? Like, why does nobody want him? Right now, nobody really needs a point guard. Like that's
part of it. Yep.
The issue. Very few teams need a point guard. And honestly, let's say we just traded D'Angelo Russell away. And let's just say you could do D'Angelo Russell for Jerami Grant straight up. Who plays point guard for the Lakers then? I assume probably Austin Reeves and Gabe Vincent. But now you're like, you then like, did you plug one hole and create another? Right? It's the little Dutch boy, I think isn't that the allegory there, where he's like plugging holes in the dam, and it's like he plugs one and then water comes out the other side, and he has to keep doing it. Like it's like, did you create another problem by fixing one? So that's where that balance comes out. I mean, in an ideal world, you probably, I would rather trade D'Angelo Russell for a better guard. I would think, and it's funny because I saw people like, why didn't Tyus Jones want to come to the Lakers? Well, one, yeah, could have got the same minimum from the Lakers, but it would have taken him over the apron, which then would have brought in a whole nother mess of restrictions on if they wanted to make a trade later. It would have just made things harder. But the second thing is there is not a roster spot right now. We're in Phoenix. Technically, there isn't there either, but it sounds like they're going to waive EJ Liddell. So there will be a roster spot. And that's guys are looking and they're just like, man, I don't know. Like, what's my role going to be?
There's also not a starting job. Whereas Phoenix said, here, you're going to start.
Exactly.
So that's
Yep. So that's the other part of it too. So yeah, just sometimes when I think doing it the way we did it here, I think can be really helpful because we're not saying the Lakers don't have enough to get Jerami Grant. It's just when you start to break it down, you get a sense of, all right, well, this is why this is hard.
Yes.
Right. Because it's not just as easy as, make this deal and go. Like sometimes it is better to wait and see, where it all kind of comes and falls out.